The envelope came on a Tuesday morning, wedged between a past-due medical bill and a foreclosure warning from a bank. Dr. Sarah Chen sat in her 2007 Honda Civic outside Portland General Hospital, engine off to save gas, watching her daughter Maya sleep in the back seat. The girl was curled around her backpack like it might disappear, her 10-year-old face still bearing the exhaustion of another night spent in the car. 3 months since the divorce. 2 months since Marcus had drained their joint account and vanished. 6 weeks since the hospital had cut Sarah's hours from full-time surgeon to part-time consulting. 2 weeks since they'd lost the apartment. The return address read, Ellsworth Partners, Arctic Legal Services, Nuuk, Greenland. Greenland. Sarah had never been to Greenland, had never known anyone from Greenland. But the envelope was thick, official, stamped with seals she didn't recognize. Inside, documents in English and Danish, property deeds, geological surveys, and a letter explaining that her grandmother, Dr. Elizabeth Novak, had died 6 months ago and left Sarah her sole possession. An Arctic research station called Polaris 7. Sarah read the letter 3 times, each word feeling more impossible than the last. Her grandmother. She'd met the woman exactly once, at her father's funeral when Sarah was 8 years old. A tall, severe woman with ice-blue eyes who'd spoken briefly about important work in the Arctic, then disappeared back to wherever she'd come from. Sarah's mother had called her that crazy woman who chose ice over family. Now that crazy woman had left Sarah a research station at 74 degrees north latitude, on the eastern coast of Greenland, 800 miles from the nearest city. The documentation was extensive. Polaris 7 had been established in 1982 as a climate research facility. Dr. Novak had owned it outright, somehow, through a complex arrangement with the Danish and Greenland governments. The station sat on 200 acres of coastal land, had been abandoned since Elizabeth's death, and according to the lawyer's cover letter, requires immediate attention to prevent structural failure and environmental contamination. Sarah laughed, a sound like breaking glass. She was living in her car with her daughter, had $342 in her checking account, owed $187,000 in student loans, and someone had just left her an abandoned building in the Arctic Circle. Maya stirred in the back seat, blinking awake. Her voice came small and hopeful. Mom, do we have to go to the library again today? The library, where they spent days pretending Sarah was doing research while Maya did homework, and they both tried to stay warm. Where the staff had started looking at them with pity that made Sarah's stomach turn. Maybe not, baby, Sarah heard herself say. Maybe we're going somewhere else. Maya sat up, rubbing her eyes. Where? Sarah looked at the documents again, at the photographs included in the packet. Polaris 7 from the air, a cluster of white and blue buildings against an endless expanse of ice and rock. The main structure was larger than she'd expected, maybe 15,000 square feet. Support buildings scattered around it. Solar panels will look like wind turbines. Greenland, Sarah said. We might be going to Greenland. The lawyer's phone number connected her to a man named Henrik Ellsworth, who sounded surprised to hear from her. Dr. Chen, we begun to think you wouldn't respond. The documentation has been pending for nearly 6 months. I just received it yesterday, Sarah said, trying to keep her voice professional, while sitting in a hospital parking garage at 7 a.m. with bedhead in yesterday's scrubs. Can you tell me more about this property? Henrik's explanation was thorough and increasingly alarming. Polaris 7 had been Dr. Novak's life work, a cutting-edge research facility studying climate change, glaciology, and Arctic ecosystems. Elizabeth had lived there year-round from 1982 until her death in March, usually alone except for rotating graduate students and research partners. The station is equipped for extended habitation, Henrik explained. Solar and wind power, geothermal heating, water from glacial melt. Your grandmother was quite ingenious. She designed systems that could function independently for years. What's the condition now? A pause. We haven't been able to send anyone to assess it. The location is extremely remote. Access requires either helicopter from Tasiilaq, which is 340 miles south, or boat when the ice permits, which is only August through September. The cost of a professional inspection would be substantial. How substantial? $50,000 to $80,000, conservatively. For that reason, we've had 3 interested buyers withdraw their offers. The station exists in a legal gray area, technically private property, but subject to extensive environmental regulations. Any buyer would face immediate costs in the hundreds of thousands to either restore or properly decommission the facility. Sarah's heart sank. So it's worthless. Not worthless, Henrik corrected gently. Complex. I've been authorized by the estate to offer you assistance with sale to Polar Development Group, a mining company that's expressed interest. They've offered 30,000 euros for the property and would handle all decommissioning costs. 30,000 euros. About $32,000. Enough to rent an apartment, buy a reliable car, give Maya some stability. Enough to stop living like refugees in their own city. What would they do with it? Demolish it, most likely. They're interested in the land rights. There are mineral deposits in the region, and climate change is opening access to previously unreachable areas. Sarah thought about her grandmother, the severe woman with ice-blue eyes. 40 years building something in the Arctic. 40 years of research and data and work. Demolished for mineral rights. I need to see it first, she heard herself say. Dr. Chen, I must advise. I need to see what she built before I decide to sell it. Henrik sighed. The journey is not simple. You need to fly to Reykjavik, then to Tasiilaq, then charter a helicopter to the station. In August, you might reach it by boat, but September is approaching and ice conditions are unpredictable. The cost alone. How much? Round trip from Portland? Perhaps $8,000, and that's if everything goes smoothly. If weather delays you, if ice prevents access, costs multiply quickly. Dr. Chen, I say this with respect for your grandmother's memory. The prudent choice is to accept the offer and avoid the expense. Sarah looked at Maya, who was watching her with those dark, knowing eyes. Her daughter who'd learned to be quiet in library bathrooms, who'd stopped asking when they'd have a home again, who deserved better than a mother who always chose the prudent, safe option. I have vacation days saved, Sarah said. 2 weeks. I'm coming to see it. She hung up before Henrik could object further, before her own common sense could reassert itself. $8,000. She didn't have $8,000. She had $342 and a maxed-out credit card and absolutely no business flying to Greenland. But she also had something else, something that had been dormant for months. A spark of curiosity, the thing that had driven her through medical school and surgical training, the hunger to understand rather than accept. Maya had climbed into the front seat. Mom, are we really going to Greenland? I don't know yet, baby. But maybe. Would you want to? Will it be cold? Very cold. Maya considered this seriously. Colder than the car at night? The question hit like a blade. Yeah, baby. Colder than the car. But we'd have a building? With walls and a roof. According to the pictures, yes. Then I want to go. Maya's certainty was absolute. Can I see the pictures? Sarah showed her the photographs. Maya studied them with the intense focus she brought to everything, her small fingers tracing the outlines of the buildings. It looks like a space station, she said. Like we're going to another planet. That's one way to think about it. What did your grandmother do there? She studied ice and climate. She was trying to understand how the Earth is changing. Was she smart? Very smart. Like you. Sarah's throat tightened. Probably smarter than me. Maya looked up at her with absolute faith. I don't think anyone's smarter than you, Mom. That afternoon, Sarah worked her shift in the hospital with a strange energy humming through her veins. Between patients, she researched Arctic travel, Greenland geography, survival equipment. The costs mounted in her mind like compound interest. Flights, gear, supplies, helicopter charter. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Her phone buzzed during a break. A text from her mother. Heard you're thinking about Greenland. Don't be stupid. That woman was insane, and you were about to follow in her footsteps. Sell whatever she left you and focus on your actual life. Sarah stared at the message. Her actual life. Living in her car with her daughter. Working part-time because the hospital's new AI diagnostic system had made senior surgeons redundant. Fighting with insurance companies over Maya's asthma medication. Watching her daughter's childhood slip away in library reading rooms and parking garages. What exactly about that was working? She called her supervisor. Dr. Martinez, I need to request my vacation time. 2 weeks, starting as soon as possible. Sarah, you know we're short-staffed. Can this wait until... No, Sarah interrupted. It can't wait. I'm owed the time, and I need to use it now. A pause. Then Dr. Martinez's voice, carefully neutral. Is everything all right? I'm inheriting property. I need to assess it. In Portland. In Greenland. A longer pause. Greenland. Yes. Sarah, are you? Do you need to talk to someone? Employee Services has counseling resources. I'm fine, Michael. I just need my vacation time. She got it, but she could hear the unspoken concern in her supervisor's voice. Another doctor having a breakdown. Another brilliant surgeon coming apart under the pressures of modern medicine and personal crisis. Let them think what they wanted. That night in the car, Sarah did something she hadn't done since the divorce. She opened her emergency fund. The account she'd promised herself she'd never touch except in true crisis. It held $8,247. Money she'd scraped together over 5 years. Money that was supposed to be for Maya's future emergencies. This was an emergency. Different than she'd imagined, but emergency nonetheless. She booked the flights, Portland to Reykjavik, Reykjavik to Kalusuk, Kalusuk to Tasiilaq. From there, she'd have to figure out the final leg to Polaris 7. The tickets cost $4,300. She added cold weather gear to her shopping cart. Proper Arctic clothing would cost another $800. Maya was asleep in the back seat, her breath fogging the windows. Sarah sat in the driver's seat, her hand hovering over the confirm purchase button. This was insane. She was about to spend nearly all their safety net on a trip to see an abandoned research station she'd probably just sell anyway. The prudent thing, the smart thing, was to accept the mining company's offer, take the $32,000, and rebuild their life in Portland. But prudent and smart hadn't kept her marriage together, hadn't protected her job, hadn't prevented their spiral into homelessness. Maybe it was time to try something different. She clicked confirm. The confirmation email arrived immediately, stark and real. Departure in 4 days. Sarah felt simultaneously terrified and more alive than she'd been in months. She spent the next 3 days in a blur of preparation, calling Henrik back to arrange helicopter transport from Tasiilaq. Another $2,400, which made her physically ill to spend. Buying supplies, food, batteries, first aid, survival equipment. Researching Arctic safety protocols and hypothermia treatment. Her mother called twice. Sarah didn't answer. Her ex-husband called once, demanding to know where she was taking his daughter and threatening legal action. Sarah informed him that he'd lost the right to object when he'd disappeared with their money and hung up. Dr. Martinez pulled her aside at work. Sarah, I need you to know that taking this trip, given your current circumstances, it's going to look bad in your file. People are concerned. Concerned about what? Your judgment. Your stability. Sarah met his eyes. Michael, I'm a surgeon who's been sleeping in her car with her daughter for 2 weeks because my ex-husband committed financial fraud and the hospital cut my position. My judgment and stability have been severely tested and have held. This trip is the first proactive thing I've done in months. If that concerns people, that's their problem. His expression softened. Just be careful. And come back. I always do. The morning they left for the airport, Sarah packed everything they owned, which fit in 3 duffel bags and 2 backpacks, into the car. She'd sold the Honda to a colleague for $2,000 cash, enough to cover the remaining costs and leave a small buffer. Maya wore her new Arctic parka, 3 sizes too big, the hood swallowing her small face. She looked simultaneously tiny and brave, like a child cosmonaut preparing for launch. Ready? Sarah asked. Ready, Maya confirmed. They took a taxi to the airport, watching Portland disappear behind them. Sarah felt the weight of every person who thought she was crazy, every colleague whispering about her breakdown, every rational argument against this trip. But she also felt her grandmother's severe blue eyes in that photograph, staring across 40 years and hundreds of miles. You built something, Sarah thought. You built something and lived with it and died with it. And I'm not going to let them destroy it without understanding why. The flight to Reykjavik was long and gave Sarah too much time to think. She reviewed the documents again, reading Elizabeth's research papers, which Henrik had included in the packet. Her grandmother had been studying climate feedback loops, the ways small changes in Arctic ice could trigger cascading effects across global weather systems. Her work had been published in prestigious journals through the early 1990s, then had gradually disappeared from academic literature. The last paper Sarah could find was from 2003, a stark warning about methane release from melting permafrost that had been largely ignored. After that, nothing. Elizabeth had apparently continued her work in isolation, publishing nothing, sharing nothing, alone with her ice and her instruments and whatever discoveries she'd made. Why? Why retreat from the academic world? Why choose solitude over collaboration? Maya slept against Sarah's shoulder, her breathing steady. Sarah stroked her daughter's hair and wondered what inheritance really meant. Property, yes. Money, sometimes. But also choices, patterns, the architecture of how you decided to live your life. Elizabeth had chosen isolation and dedication over comfort and connection. Had that made her crazy, as Sarah's mother claimed? Or had it made her free? Reykjavik appeared below them, a cluster of colorful buildings against volcanic rock. They had a 6-hour layover before the flight to Ellsworth. Sarah and Maya walked the city, ate real food in a restaurant, felt pavement under their feet instead of car seats. Mom, Maya said over fish and chips. What if we can't get to the station? What if the helicopter can't fly? Then we come home and I sell it without seeing it. Would you be sad? Sarah considered the question. Yeah, baby. I think I would. Because of your grandmother? Because of the not knowing. Because she built something and I want to understand what it was. Maya nodded solemnly. Like science. You have to look at things yourself to really know. Exactly like science. The flight to Ellsworth was smaller, a propeller plane that shook in turbulence. Below them, icebergs floated in dark water like scattered teeth. The landscape was overwhelming in its emptiness, just ice and rock and ocean, no trees, no signs of human habitation for hundreds of miles. They landed on a gravel airstrip on an island barely larger than the runway itself. Ellsworth Airport was a single building with peeling paint and a waiting area that held maybe 20 people. A helicopter pilot named Lars met them outside, a weather-beaten man in his 50s who looked at Sarah and Maya with something between respect and concern. You're going to Polaris, 7? His English was accented but clear. Yes. Is that a problem? Not a problem. Just unusual. No one's been there since Dr. Novak died. Weather's been too rough, and nobody wanted to pay for the flight. He studied the sky. We've got a window now. Clear conditions for maybe 6 hours. If we're going, we go now. Sarah looked at Maya, who nodded, then back at Lars. We're ready. The helicopter was smaller than Sarah had imagined, a red and white machine that looked barely substantial enough for the journey. Lars loaded their bags while Sarah and Maya climbed into seats that smelled of oil and cold metal. It's about 90 minutes, Lars shouted over the engine noise. Beautiful flight. Terrifying if you're not used to it. You get scared, you tell me, okay? Sarah squeezed Maya's hand. We'll be fine. They lifted off, and the world dropped away beneath them. The island disappeared, replaced by ocean, then ice, then coastline so jagged and raw it looked like the planet had been broken open and left to freeze. Lars flew low, following the coastline north. Sarah pressed her face to the window, watching glaciers calve into the sea, watching ice formations that looked like frozen cathedrals. Maya pointed at everything. Icebergs shaped like animals, a pod of whales breaching in a channel, aurora dancing faintly in the afternoon sky. Your grandmother, Lars shouted back to them. She was special lady. Tough. Smart. She'd fly with me, sometimes to collect ice samples from the glaciers. Never scared, never complain about cold. She'd just take her samples and tell me about what the ice was saying. What was it saying? Maya asked. Lars's expression grew somber. That everything is changing, that the old ice is dying. She said we should be listening better. After an hour, the landscape began to change. The raw coastal cliffs gave way to a valley between ice fields, and then Sarah saw it. Polaris 7. The station sat on a rocky peninsula jutting into a fjord, protected from the worst ice by its position, but still surrounded by white on 3 sides. The main building was larger than the photograph suggested, a modern structure of white paneling and blue steel, with solar panels covering the south-facing roof. Satellite dishes pointed at the sky. Wind turbines turned slowly in the breeze. Surrounding the main building were smaller structures, what looked like equipment sheds, a greenhouse with clouded panels, storage containers stacked and secured against the elements. And something else, something the photographs hadn't shown clearly. A second building, set back from the main structure, partially built into the rocky hillside behind the station. Smaller, more fortified, with steel doors and no windows Sarah could see from the air. "What's that?" she asked, pointing. Lars followed her gesture. "Storage, I think. Dr. Novak called it the vault. She kept sensitive equipment there. I helped her install the security system maybe 15 years ago. Never saw inside, though. She said it was for protecting research from the elements." The helicopter descended toward a marked landing pad near the main building. As they got lower, Sarah could see more details. The buildings were in better condition than she'd feared. Paint was faded but intact. The solar panels looked functional. There was no visible structural damage. "Your grandmother built well," Lars observed, clearly thinking the same thing. "Most stations this far north fall apart without constant maintenance. This one, it's still standing proud." They touched down gently. Lars killed the engine, and sudden silence rushed in, broken only by the wind and the distant crack of ice. Sarah and Maya climbed out, stepping onto frozen ground at the top of the world. The cold was immediate and absolute, seeping through their new parkas like they were paper. The wind carried the smell of ice and salt, and something else, something ancient and empty. Sarah stood on the landing pad, looking at the station her grandmother had built, and felt the weight of the moment settle on her shoulders. Behind her, Portland and its problems seemed impossibly distant. Before her, locked buildings holding 40 years of secrets. Lars began unloading their bags. "I can give you 4 hours," he said. "After that, weather moves in, and we won't be able to fly out until it clears. Could be tomorrow, could be 3 days." Sarah looked at the station, at the mysterious vault building, at the main structure with its dark windows. 4 hours to see 40 years of work. 4 hours to decide whether to sell her grandmother's legacy to a mining company for demolition. It wasn't enough time, but it was all she had. "Let's make them count," she said, and walked toward the main building's entrance. Maya's small hand gripped tight in hers. The door was secured with a keypad lock. Henrik had provided the code in his documentation, updated monthly by automatic timer, even after Elizabeth's death. Sarah entered the numbers, heard mechanisms click, and pushed. The door opened into darkness. She found a light switch just inside. Fluorescence flickered to life, revealing a corridor that led deeper into the station. The air inside was cold, but not freezing, maybe 40 degrees, maintained by some baseline heating system. "Hello." Maya's voice echoed. No one answered. Of course no one answered. The station had been empty for 6 months. Sarah and Lars carried the bags inside, while Maya explored the immediate area. The entrance corridor opened into a large common room that clearly served as the station's heart. Computer workstations lined one wall, their screens dark. A kitchen area occupied another corner, industrial and functional. Tables and chairs, bookshelves stuffed with scientific journals and paperbacks, a wood stove that hadn't been fired in months. Everything was neat, organized, waiting. Like Elizabeth had stepped out for a walk and would return any moment to continue her work. Lars checked his watch. "I'll wait by the helicopter. You have until 4 p.m. Then we must leave, okay?" Sarah nodded, already moving deeper into the station. Maya stayed close as they explored. The main building was larger than it appeared from outside, maybe 12,000 square feet across 2 levels. The upper level held living quarters, a master bedroom that had clearly been Elizabeth's, for smaller rooms for visiting researchers, bathrooms with industrial fixtures. The lower level was pure science. laboratory spaces with equipment Sarah couldn't immediately identify, climate monitoring stations with instruments still recording data to local hard drives, a library of core samples, ice cylinders stored in freezers that were still running, still preserving decades of frozen history. "Mom, look at this." Maya stood in front of a wall covered in graphs and photographs. Temperature readings going back 40 years. Satellite images showing ice coverage in the same location, decade by decade, the white steadily retreating. Handwritten notes in Elizabeth's precise script documenting the changes. Sarah studied the data, her medical training translating easily to scientific analysis. The pattern was stark, undeniable. The Arctic was warming faster than anywhere else on Earth. Ice that had persisted for thousands of years was disappearing in a single human lifetime. This was what her grandmother had devoted her life to documenting. Not for fame or fortune. The station's isolation proved that. But for the record itself. For the truth of what was happening. Sarah moved to the computer workstations. She pressed a power button, not expecting anything, but the screen flickered to life. Battery backup systems still functional. Emergency power reserves still maintaining critical systems. The computer asked for a password. Sarah tried a few obvious combinations. Polaris 7, Elizabeth, Novak, nothing worked. Then she tried her own birth year, 1988, the year after Elizabeth had apparently cut ties with family and retreated permanently to the Arctic. The screen unlocked. Files appeared, thousands of them, decades of data, research, observations. Sarah opened a folder dated 2023, the last year of Elizabeth's life. Inside, she found a video file titled "For Sarah." Her breath caught. Elizabeth had known her granddaughter might come here, might seek to understand. Sarah clicked play. Her grandmother's face appeared on screen, older than in the photograph from her father's funeral, but still striking. Those ice-blue eyes stared directly into the camera with uncomfortable intensity. "Sarah." Elizabeth's voice was accented, German and Danish, mixed with American English. "If you're watching this, I'm dead and you've inherited my life's work. I hope you'll forgive an old woman's presumption in deciding your future, but I had no one else to leave this to, and it's too important to let it die with me." The video showed Elizabeth sitting in this very room, the wall of graphs visible behind her. "You don't know me. Your mother made sure of that. She thought I was crazy for choosing this place over family, and perhaps she was right. But I chose it because what I discovered here matters more than comfort or connection or the ordinary consolations of human life." Elizabeth leaned forward, her expression intense. "The ice is speaking, Sarah. It's telling us we're in danger. Everything I've documented for 40 years points to the same conclusion. We've triggered feedback loops that will reshape the planet. And there's more. Something I found 10 years ago that I haven't shared with anyone because I didn't know who to trust." Sarah's pulse quickened. "In the vault, in the building set into the hillside, I've preserved my most important discovery. The access code is your birth date, 082-41988. Inside, you'll find data, samples, and documentation that proves we're closer to catastrophic climate shift than anyone publicly acknowledges. I found evidence in the ice cores, evidence that's been suppressed and ignored because it threatens too many powerful interests." Elizabeth's eyes seemed to bore through the screen into Sarah's soul. "You're a doctor. You understand triage, priority, critical intervention. Our planet is the patient, Sarah, and it's dying. What I've left you in that vault isn't just research, it's a blueprint for survival. Technology one developed to capture and store carbon at scale. Designs for systems that could buy humanity time to change course." Sarah's mind raced. Carbon capture technology. If it worked, if it was real, it would be worth. "I know what you're thinking," Elizabeth continued. "Worth, value, money. But that's not why I'm leaving this to you. I'm leaving it because you have Maya. Because you're her mother, and mothers understand protecting the future better than anyone. I died alone in the ice, Sarah, but you can make sure my work doesn't die with me." The video ended. Sarah sat frozen, staring at the blank screen. Maya had climbed into her lap at some point, her small body warm against Sarah's chest. "Is that your grandmother?" Maya asked quietly. "Yeah, baby. That's her. She sounds serious." She was very serious. "Are we going to the vault?" Sarah checked her watch. They had 2 hours before Lars needed to leave. 2 hours to explore a building that might contain revolutionary technology or might contain the delusions of a brilliant woman who'd spent too long in isolation, or might contain something else entirely. She thought about the mining company's offer. $32,000 to walk away clean. No risk, no complication, just money and a return to their normal life of poverty and struggle. But if Elizabeth was telling the truth, if what waited in that vault was real, then this was bigger than money. This was the reason her grandmother had sacrificed everything. This was the inheritance that mattered. "Yeah," Sarah said, standing and setting Maya on her feet. "We're going to the vault." They exited the main building into wind that had picked up since their arrival. The sky showed the first signs of the weather system Lars had warned about, dark clouds gathering on the horizon. The vault building sat 50 yards behind the main station, built partially into the hillside with only its reinforced front visible. As they approached, Sarah noticed details the aerial view had missed. The walls were thicker than the main building, the door was steel, and cameras mounted above the entrance still had small red lights indicating active power. Elizabeth had kept this building running on priority power, even when other systems might fail. Sarah entered the code, 082411988. Mechanism's word. Multiple locks disengaged. The door swung open on hydraulic hinges, revealing darkness beyond. Sarah found another light switch. Banks of LEDs flickered on, revealing a space that made her gasp. The vault was a single large room, maybe 2,000 square feet, with a ceiling that stretched up into the hillside. And it was full, not full of equipment or supplies, full of something else entirely, full of future. The vault's interior was temperature-controlled, warmer than the main station at maybe 55 degrees. Sarah's breath didn't fog here. Everything was preserved with archival precision. The walls were lined with server racks, their LED indicators blinking in rhythmic patterns. Massive battery banks occupied one corner, still charged, still maintaining power to whatever systems Elizabeth had deemed critical enough to protect. But it was the center of the room that drew Sarah's attention. A workstation unlike anything she'd seen in the main building. Multiple screens, 3D printers, fabrication equipment, and something that looked like a small-scale chemical processing plant. Beside it, rows of cylinders, some clear, some metallic, each labeled with dates and coordinates. Maya walked slowly along the rows, reading labels aloud. Core Sample 7B, 2019, depth 2,400 meters. Air Sample 14C, 2021, permafrost site, Delta. "What's all this, Mom?" "Evidence," Sarah whispered. "Your great-grandmother was collecting evidence." She moved to the workstation. Unlike the computers in the main building, these were state-of-the-art, purchased within the last few years judging by their design. Elizabeth had been spending money on something. Sarah touched a keyboard. The screens came alive immediately, no password required. An interface loaded showing dozens of programs, data analysis software, climate modeling systems, and something labeled Project Synthesis, Final Protocols. Sarah clicked on it. A new window opened, revealing a document that made her medical training seem suddenly very relevant. It was a research paper, unpublished, dated 3 months before Elizabeth's death. The title read, Catastrophic Methane Release Event, Detection, Documentation, and Mitigation Strategy for Imminent Arctic Feedback Loop. Sarah began reading. Her hand started shaking before she finished the first page. Elizabeth hadn't just been documenting climate change. She discovered something specific, something immediate, deep in the permafrost beneath Greenland's ice sheet. Ancient methane deposits were destabilizing faster than any model predicted. The ice cores proved it, methane concentrations spiking in ways that suggested massive releases beginning within 18 to 36 months. When that methane reached the atmosphere, it would trigger a feedback loop that would accelerate warming beyond any tipping point. Not in 50 years or 100. In less than 2 years. "Oh my God," Sarah breathed. "Mom." Maya's voice carried worry. I'm okay, baby. Just reading something important. The document continued. Elizabeth had shared her preliminary findings with 3 major climate research institutions in 2022. All 3 had requested additional data before publishing. She provided it. Then silence. Her emails went unanswered. Her calls weren't returned. Then 2 of the research institutions had received significant grants from fossil fuel companies. Elizabeth had realized what was happening. Her discovery was being suppressed, not because it was wrong, but because it was right, and acknowledging it would demand immediate, massive action that threatened trillion-dollar industries. So she'd stop trying to convince them. Instead, she'd built something else. Sarah scrolled further into the document, into sections labeled Mitigation Technology and Atmospheric Carbon Capture, Scale Deployment Strategy. Her grandmother had spent the last decade designing a system, not just theory, but actual engineered technology that could capture atmospheric carbon and methane at scale, using Arctic conditions, using natural processes accelerated by human innovation. The designs were there, blueprints for machines that could be built using current technology and deployed across Arctic regions, calculations showing how many units would be needed, where they should be placed, what impact they'd have. And something else, something that made Sarah's breath catch. A cost analysis showing that implementing this technology would require approximately $50 billion initially, but would save trillions in prevented climate damage. Elizabeth had worked out everything: funding models, deployment schedules, maintenance protocols, even political strategies for getting governments to cooperate. She solved it, Sarah whispered. She actually solved it. Solved what? Maya asked, now standing beside her mother, trying to understand the screens full of data. How to give humanity more time. Sarah pulled Maya close. Your great-grandmother figured out how to slow down climate change long enough for us to fix our bigger problems. Is that good? That's everything, baby. Sarah continued exploring the vault. Beyond the workstation, she found physical prototypes, small-scale models of the carbon capture units. They looked like sophisticated air filters combined with chemical reactors, designed to use wind power and temperature differentials to pull carbon dioxide and methane from the air and convert them into stable compounds. Test results were documented meticulously. The prototypes worked. Efficiency ratings, capture volumes, energy requirements, all documented with scientific rigor. Elizabeth hadn't just theorized. She'd built working models and proven the concept. Sarah moved to a filing cabinet against the far wall. Inside, she found legal documents, patent applications, dozens of them, filed under Elizabeth's name, but never pursued to completion. Letters from patent attorneys warning that large energy companies were filing similar patents, potentially blocking Elizabeth's work. More evidence of suppression. And then, at the bottom of the lowest drawer, Sarah found a small fireproof safe. It had a simple combination lock. Taped to the front was a note in Elizabeth's handwriting. Sarah, your father's birth year backward. Her father had been born in 1965. Sarah tried 5691. The safe opened. Inside were USB drives, 20 of them, each labeled with dates and locations. And a letter, handwritten on paper that felt expensive and important. Sarah unfolded it. My dear Sarah, the letter began. If you found this, you've made it to the vault. You've seen what I built. Now you need to understand why I hid it. In 2018, I attempted to publish my findings about the methane deposits. Before I could, my research station was broken into. Nothing was stolen, at least nothing obvious, but my main computers were accessed. Files were copied. 3 months later, I received a visit from representatives of Arctis Energy Corporation. They were very polite. They explained that my research was valuable but premature. They offered me $10 million to consult exclusively for them, to share all my data and designs, and to cease independent publication. When I refused, they became less polite. They told me that my work threatened global energy markets, that releasing it would cause economic chaos. They said they had legal teams that could tie up my patents for decades, PR firms that could discredit me, and political connections that could revoke my research permits. But they made a mistake. They underestimated what a stubborn old woman with nothing to lose could accomplish. I spent the next 5 years documenting everything in duplicate, triplicate, backing it up on systems they couldn't access. The USB drives in this safe contain complete copies of all my research, all my designs, and all the evidence of suppression. They're encrypted with a key only you have. The key is hidden in plain sight, Sarah, in the place where we first met. In the words I spoke to you at your father's funeral that your mother thought were crazy ramblings, but were actually coordinates and passwords. I'm sorry to burden you with this, but I had no choice. Arctis Energy has too much power, too many connections. They've already bought silence from institutions that should have been shouting my warnings from rooftops. You're a doctor. You understand that sometimes the patient won't accept treatment until the symptoms become unbearable. Our planet is that patient. My research shows we have less than 2 years before those symptoms become catastrophic and irreversible. You have 3 choices. 1. Sell the station to the mining company. Take the money and walk away. They'll demolish everything, destroy the evidence, and no one will know what was lost. You and Maya will be safe and comfortable. 2. Try to publish the research yourself. Be prepared for the same suppression I faced, but amplified. They'll destroy your credibility, your career, possibly your custody of Maya. They have unlimited resources and no scruples. 3. Find the encryption key, access the full data, and use the evidence of suppression to force the truth into public view so loudly and so completely that it can't be buried. It will be dangerous. It will be expensive. It will consume your life. But it might save the world your daughter has to live in. I chose isolation and secrecy because I was alone and scared. But you're not alone, Sarah. You have Maya. You have the future looking at you through her eyes, asking if you did everything you could. I died knowing I failed to make the world listen. You don't have to make the same mistake. All my love, all my hope, all my work, it's yours now. Choose wisely. Elizabeth. Sarah read the letter 3 times, her hands shaking harder with each pass. Maya leaned against her side, quiet and patient, sensing that something momentous was happening. Mom, Maya finally asked, what does it say? How do you explain to a 10-year-old that her great-grandmother had discovered proof of impending climate catastrophe, developed technology to help prevent it, and been systematically silenced by corporate interests? How do you explain that Sarah now held the power to either expose that truth or take the easy money and walk away? It says your great-grandmother was very brave, Sarah said carefully, and that she wants us to be brave too. Were people mean to her? Yes, baby. Very powerful people were very mean to her. Because she was telling the truth? Because telling the truth threatened their money. Maya processed this with the straightforward moral clarity of childhood. That's bad. They should be in trouble. They should be. But getting them in trouble might get us in trouble too. But we're already in trouble, Maya pointed out with devastating logic. We don't have a home. We don't have money. We're already in the biggest trouble. At least this way we'd be in trouble for being good instead of just being poor. Sarah laughed, surprised and proud. You're absolutely right. She looked around the vault at 40 years of work, at technology that could matter, at evidence of corporate malfeasance, at a grandmother's desperate legacy. She thought about the mining company's offer, about the prudent choice, about all the rational arguments for taking the money and walking away. Then she looked at Maya, who was watching her with those dark, knowing eyes, and Sarah understood something her grandmother had understood 40 years ago. Some things mattered more than safety. Some truths had to be told regardless of cost. Some fights had to be fought even when the odds were terrible. We're not selling, Sarah said. The words felt like jumping off a cliff, terrifying and liberating simultaneously. What are we doing instead? We're going to figure out your great-grandmother's encryption key. We're going to access all this data. And then we're going to make so much noise that the whole world has to listen. Maya grinned, fierce and small, like being a superhero, like being scientists, which is basically the same thing. Sarah checked her watch. They had 90 minutes before Lars needed to leave. Not nearly enough time to search for encryption keys or plan revolution, but enough time to start. She began photographing everything with her phone. The research paper, the prototypes, the patent documents, the letter. the USB drives, creating a backup of the backup, insurance against whatever might come next. While she worked, Maya explored the rest of the vault. She found more filing cabinets full of correspondence, research notes, and something that made her call out excitedly. "Mom, there's a whole drawer of letters addressed to you." Sarah crossed the vault to where Maya stood. The drawer was labeled "For Sarah, Personal Correspondence." Inside were dozens of letters, all handwritten, all unsealed. Sarah pulled one out randomly. It was dated December 2015. "Dear Sarah," it began, "you're 27 today. I wonder if you're happy. I wonder if you think of me at all, or if I'm just a crazy grandmother who chose ice over family. I want you to know I think of you constantly. Every data point I record, every sample I analyze, I'm doing it for your future, for the world you'll inherit." I know that sounds grandiose. Your mother would certainly say so, but it's true. I made choices you might not understand. I let relationships wither. I chose work over love, dedication over comfort. Were they the right choices? I honestly don't know, but they were my choices, made with full knowledge that they'd cost me everything normal and human. I hope you make different choices. I hope you find balance I never could. But I also hope that if you're ever faced with a truth that demands everything from you, you'll have the courage to pay that price. Happy birthday, my brilliant granddaughter. I'm sorry I can't say this to your face. Sarah's vision blurred. She pulled out another letter. This one from 2020. Dear Sarah, you have a daughter now. Maya. What a beautiful name. I found out from a public birth announcement online. Your mother certainly wouldn't tell me. I'm crying as I write this. Tears freezing on my cheeks in this ridiculous cold. I'm a great-grandmother, and I'll never meet my great-grandchild. That's the cost of my choices, the price I paid for dedication. But I've spent the last month working day and night on calculations that might buy Maya's generation 20 more years to fix what we broke. Is it a fair trade? A great-grandmother's love for 20 years of planetary stability? I don't know. I just know it's the only thing I have to offer. Sarah couldn't read more. She closed the drawer gently, her throat tight with grief for a grandmother she'd never known and now never would. She wrote to you a lot, Maya observed quietly. Yeah, she did. Did you ever write back? I didn't know. My mom never told me. That's sad. Yeah, baby. It's very sad. They stood together in the vault, surrounded by a lifetime of work and love and sacrifice that Sarah's mother had ensured would remain invisible until now. Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from Lars. Weather moving faster than predicted. We need to leave in 30 minutes or get stuck here for minimum 48 hours. Decision time. They could gather what they could carry, fly back to civilization, and figure out next steps from the safety of Portland. Or they could stay, commit fully to understanding what Elizabeth had left, and risk being stranded in the Arctic with a 10-year-old daughter and rapidly depleting supplies. The rational choice was obvious. Leave now, come back better prepared. But Sarah remembered Elizabeth's letter. 2 years until catastrophe. How much of that time would be wasted by playing it safe? She texted back, "We're staying." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, "Are you certain? Forecast shows major storm. Could be stuck for a week." "We're certain," Sarah typed. "We have shelter, supplies, and important work to do." A long pause. Then, "Your grandmother would approve. I'll return when weather clears. Be careful." Sarah watched through the vault's external camera as Lars's helicopter lifted off, grew small against the darkening sky, and disappeared south. They were alone, truly alone. 2 people at the top of the world, cut off from civilization, with nothing but an abandoned research station and a dead woman's revolutionary secrets. Maya looked up at her mother. "Are we really staying? We're really staying. For how long? As long as it takes. As long as what takes." Sarah gestured around the vault, at the servers and samples and prototypes, at 40 years of work that had been systematically ignored and suppressed. As long as it takes to understand all of this. To find your great-grandmother's encryption key. To figure out how to make the world listen to what she discovered. That sounds like it might take a long time. It might. What about school? What about your job? School can wait. My job. Sarah laughed bitterly. My job cut me to part-time, and will probably eliminate me completely if I don't show up. But baby, I think maybe we've been living the wrong life. Maybe this, she gestured around them. Maybe this is what we're supposed to be doing. Saving the world? Trying to, which is more than we were doing before. The wind outside picked up, howling around the vault's reinforced walls. Snow began falling, visible through the external camera feeds. Thick, heavy flakes that meant serious weather. Sarah and Maya returned to the main building to gather supplies. They need to winterize, to prepare for an extended stay. As they worked, Sarah's mind raced through everything she'd learned. The methane deposits, the carbon capture technology, the suppression by Arctis energy, the encrypted USB drives, the letters she'd never received, and most importantly, the encryption key hidden where we first met in the words I spoke that seemed like crazy ramblings. Where they first met, at Sarah's father's funeral when Sarah was 8 years old. What had Elizabeth said? Sarah closed her eyes, reaching back through 24 years of memory. The funeral had been in Portland. Small service, her mother crying, and this tall, severe woman approaching, kneeling to Sarah's height. What had she said? Your father was a good man who loved you very much. That was normal enough. But then, what else? Something that had made Sarah's mother pull her away, muttering about inappropriate timing. It came back in fragments. Elizabeth had touched Sarah's forehead gently and said something that had seemed strange at the time. Numbers? Coordinates? Remember, 74 north, 21 west. The ice remembers what we forget. 8 years, 2 months, for days. Carry it forward. Sarah's mother had hustled her away before Elizabeth could say more, but those words had stuck in 8-year-old Sarah's mind precisely because they'd seemed so bizarre. 74 north, 21 west. That was here, the approximate coordinates of Polaris 7. 8 years, 2 months, for days. When calculated from the funeral date in 1999, that was exactly when Sarah had been born. August 24th, 1988. But there was more. The ice remembers what we forget. Carry it forward. Sarah ran back to the vault. Maya followed, sensing urgency. The USB drives sat in the safe, 20 of them, each encrypted. Sarah grabbed one and plugged it into the workstation. An encryption dialog appeared. Enter passphrase. Sarah tried. 7421082411988. Access denied. She tried. Thice remembers. Access denied. She tried variations, combinations, everything she could think of from Elizabeth's cryptic message. Nothing worked. Damn it, Sarah breathed. I'm missing something. What are you missing? Maya asked. The encryption key. Your great-grandmother hid it in something she said to me at my dad's funeral, but I can't figure out the exact combination. What exactly did she say? Sarah repeated the words. Maya listened with the intense concentration she brought to difficult problems. She said, carry it forward, Maya noted. What if that's literal? What if you're supposed to add the numbers instead of just putting them together? Sarah blinked. Carry forward. Add them sequentially? She tried. 74 plus 21 plus 08 plus 24 plus 1988 is equal to 2,115. Still nothing. Maybe multiply? Maya suggested. Too many digits. What about using words? Maya tried, like writing out the coordinates and dates as words. Sarah typed. CVNTYFORNORTHTVNTO and EWESDIGHTEWENTO The encryption dialog flashed. Processing. Then, access granted. Sarah's heart leaped. You brilliant, brilliant child. The USB drive's contents appeared. Thousands of files. Raw data from ice cores. Climate models. Research papers. And a video file labeled Start Here. Sarah clicked it. Elizabeth appeared on screen again, but this recording was different. She looked tired, older, and the timestamp showed it had been recorded just days before her death. Sarah, Elizabeth began, her voice weaker than in the previous video. If you've cracked the encryption, you have all my research now. Everything I've discovered, everything I've built. And you know about the suppression. What you don't know yet is how deep it goes. Arctis Energy isn't acting alone. They're part of a larger network. Energy companies, governments, financial institutions, all working to delay climate action because immediate response would cost them trillions in stranded assets. They're not evil, exactly. They're just rational actors protecting their interests. But their rational self-interest is destroying the planet. I've documented their suppression efforts in files labeled conspiracy. You'll find emails, financial transactions, proof of bribery and intimidation. It's all there. Enough to destroy careers and topple corporate boards. But here's what you need to understand. They're winning. They've been winning for 40 years. Every climate conference that produces weak commitments. Every regulation that gets watered down. Every research institution that gets quietly defunded. They're winning because they're coordinated and we're scattered. My carbon capture technology can help. It can buy time. But technology alone won't save us. We need systematic change. We need people to know the truth about what's being done to them. You're not just a doctor, Sarah. You're a truth teller. You're someone who sees what's broken and tries to fix it. I'm giving you the tools to fix the biggest broken thing in human history. The question is, will you use them? Elizabeth leaned closer to the camera, those ice-blue eyes burning with intensity. I couldn't do it alone. I was too isolated, too old, too discredited. But you have advantages I never had. You have Maya. Having a child makes the future real in ways nothing else can. You have modern communication tools that can spread truth faster than suppression can contain it. And you have something else. You have nothing to lose. Sarah flinched at the words, but Elizabeth continued. You're living in your car. Your career is barely surviving. Your marriage is over. You're at rock bottom, Sarah, which means you're free in ways I never was. You could take risks I couldn't. You can burn bridges that don't exist anymore. So burn them. Take my research and make it a wildfire. Force the truth into public consciousness so completely that it can't be ignored. Make them respond not because they want to, but because the alternative is losing everything. I'm giving you a war to fight, my brilliant granddaughter. I'm sorry it's necessary, but I'm not sorry I'm giving it to you. Because you're the only person I trust to fight it properly. The vault contains everything you need. Technology, evidence, resources. Use them well. And remember, you're not alone. You have Maya. You have my 40 years of work. You have the truth. That's more than most revolutionaries start with. Good luck. I love you. And I'm sorry we never got to know each other properly. Change the world for me. Will you? For Maya. For the future. For all of us who ran out of time. Change it. The video ended. Sarah sat frozen, tears streaming down her face. Maya climbed into her lap, and they held each other while wind howled outside and snow buried the station under white silence. Around them, servers hummed with 40 years of data. Prototypes sat ready for deployment. Evidence of corporate conspiracy waited to be exposed. And two people, a broke surgeon and a 10-year-old girl, held the power to either save the world or watch it burn. Mom, Maya whispered, are we really going to do this? Sarah thought about Portland, about their car, about struggling and failing and living small while the planet died incrementally. Then she thought about Elizabeth, alone in the ice for 40 years, documenting catastrophe and building solutions that nobody would acknowledge. She thought about Maya's future, about what kind of world her daughter would inherit if someone didn't fight. Yeah, baby, Sarah said, her voice stronger than she felt. We're really going to do this. How? I don't know yet, but we're going to figure it out. Together. Outside, the storm intensified. They were trapped at the top of the world with revolutionary technology, damning evidence, and absolutely no idea how to deploy either without being destroyed by powers vastly greater than themselves. But they had time. The storm would keep them here for days, maybe a week. Time to learn. Time to plan. Time to transform from refugees into revolutionaries. Sarah pulled up the files labeled conspiracy and began reading. Maya fell asleep in her lap, exhausted by the day's revelations. And in the vault beneath them, Elizabeth's life's work waited patiently for the granddaughter she'd never known to carry it forward into battle. The inheritance wasn't money. It was a war. And Sarah Chen, broke surgeon and single mother, had just enlisted. The storm lasted 5 days. Sarah used every hour. She started with the conspiracy files, reading late into the Arctic nights while Maya slept in Elizabeth's old bedroom. The documentation was meticulous, damning, and terrifying in its scope. Arctis Energy Corporation wasn't just suppressing climate research. They were running a coordinated global campaign to delay meaningful climate action while positioning themselves to profit from the inevitable crisis. Elizabeth had documented everything: emails between Arctis executives and government officials, financial transfers to research institutions with implicit instructions to bury inconvenient findings, PR campaigns designed to sow doubt about climate science, legal threats sent to journalists who got too close to the truth. But the most chilling discovery was something called Project Adaptation. Internal Arctis documents from 2019 outlined a strategy that made Sarah's blood run cold. The company had concluded that preventing catastrophic climate change was no longer possible. Too much momentum, too many entrenched interests. Instead, they were positioning themselves to profit from the adaptation. They were buying land in regions that would become more habitable as the planet warmed, investing in technologies that would be essential as traditional agriculture failed, securing water rights in areas that would face severe droughts. Essentially, they were engineering a future where billions would suffer while a select few prospered enormously. And they were blocking anyone, like Elizabeth, who offered solutions that might reduce their profit margins. "These people are monsters," Sarah muttered, reading an email where an Arctis VP casually discussed acceptable population displacement in coastal regions. She photographed everything. Thousands of pages of evidence. Then she encrypted it all using methods Elizabeth had documented, creating redundant backups scattered across multiple drives. During the day, while Maya was awake, Sarah explored the carbon capture prototypes. The technology was elegant in its simplicity, using Arctic temperature differentials and wind power to drive chemical reactions that pulled carbon dioxide and methane from the atmosphere. The captured gases were then converted into stable compounds that could be stored safely or even used as building materials. Elizabeth had calculated that 50,000 units deployed across Arctic regions could remove approximately 2 billion tons of carbon annually, enough to buy humanity perhaps 20 years to transition away from fossil fuels. The technology worked. Elizabeth's test data proved it. Small-scale prototypes had been running successfully for 5 years before her death. But scaling it required money, political will, and public awareness. All the things Arctis Energy had spent billions ensuring wouldn't materialize. Sarah found Elizabeth's deployment plans. The old woman had mapped out everything: optimal placement coordinates, supply chain logistics, maintenance protocols, even training programs for local operators. She designed a system that could be deployed by communities themselves, creating jobs and local ownership rather than corporate control. It was brilliant, practical, and completely threatening to every energy company on Earth. No wonder they'd suppressed it. Maya helped where she could, organizing physical samples, labeling files, learning more about climate science in 5 days than most children learned in years. She treated it like an adventure, exploring the station during breaks, asking endless questions about how everything worked. On the third day, she found something Sarah had missed. "Mom, there's another room." Sarah looked up from the computer where she'd been analyzing Elizabeth's financial records. "What?" "Behind the library. There's a door hidden behind the bookshelf. I found it when I was looking for more books to read." Sarah followed Maya to the station's small library. Sure enough, when Maya pulled on a specific shelf, it swung outward on hidden hinges, revealing a narrow door. Sarah's pulse quickened. Another secret, another layer to Elizabeth's preparation. The door was locked, but Sarah found a key on Elizabeth's personal keyring, a small brass thing labeled simply Archive. The room beyond was small, maybe 200 square feet, climate-controlled and dark. Sarah found the light switch. What illuminated made her gasp. The walls were covered in newspaper clippings, academic papers, and photographs spanning 40 years. But these weren't about climate data. These were about people. Scientists who died unexpectedly. Journalists who disappeared while investigating energy companies. Researchers whose careers have been destroyed by sudden scandals. Activists who'd faced mysterious legal troubles. Elizabeth had been documenting the casualties of the climate war. Each face had a small biography attached. Dr. Michael Torres, oceanographer, died in suspicious car accident 3 days before publishing paper on ocean acidification, 2005. Jennifer Walsh, investigative journalist, disappeared while researching Arctic's energy financial practices, 2011. Professor Sarah Okonkwo, climate scientist, career destroyed by fabricated plagiarism charges after testifying before Congress, 2016. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. Oh God, Sarah whispered. She was keeping a memorial. Maya stood beside her, reading the names. Did bad people hurt all these people? I think so, baby. Are the bad people going to hurt us? The question hung in the cold air. Sarah wanted to lie, to reassure, to promise safety. But Maya deserved truth. They might try, Sarah said carefully. That's why we have to be very smart about how we share what we know. How do we be smart about it? We make sure the information gets out so publicly and so widely that making us disappear wouldn't stop it. We make ourselves more useful alive than dead. Maya processed this with her characteristic seriousness. Like insurance. Exactly like insurance. Sarah photographed the memorial wall, each face, each story. More evidence. More proof of how far Arctic's energy and companies like them were willing to go. Then she noticed something else. A small locked cabinet in the corner. Elizabeth's key ring had another key labeled Final Insurance. Inside the cabinet, Sarah found a sat phone. Still charged, still functional. And beside it, a handwritten list of names and numbers. Sarah recognized some of them. Investigative journalists, known for exposing corporate corruption. Climate activists with massive social media followings. Politicians who'd built careers on environmental advocacy. Scientists who'd been vocal about the urgency of climate action. Elizabeth had been preparing a communication strategy. A way to release her research to people who could amplify it, who had platforms large enough that suppression would be difficult. And at the bottom of the list, a name that made Sarah's breath catch. Rachel Morrison, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, New York Times. Personal mobile. Trustworthy. Use in emergency. Elizabeth had identified allies. Had created a network Sarah could activate when the time was right. But when was the right time? They were still trapped by the storm, still isolated, still vulnerable. Sarah needed more. She needed to understand not just what Elizabeth had discovered, but how to deploy it strategically, how to create enough momentum that corporate suppression would fail. She returned to the main vault and dove deeper into the files. Elizabeth had been thorough almost to the point of obsession. Every aspect of her research was documented in duplicate, triplicate, with methodologies so transparent that replication would be straightforward. Sarah found a folder labeled Legal Strategy, if suppression continues. Inside was a draft lawsuit. Elizabeth had worked with lawyers, discreetly paying cash, to prepare legal action against Arctic's energy for fraud, suppression of scientific research, and crimes against humanity. The complaint was complete, ready to file. It just needed a plaintiff willing to sign it and face the consequences. Elizabeth had planned to file it herself. The date on the last revision was 2 weeks before her death. She'd run out of time, but Sarah hadn't. On the 5th day, the storm began to break. Sarah stood at the window of the main building, watching clouds thin and sunlight return to the ice. Lars called on the sat phone. Weather's clearing. I can be there in 6 hours if you want extraction. Sarah looked around the station. At 5 days' worth of work. At the evidence she'd compiled, the plans she'd begun formulating, the revolution she'd inherited. Not yet, she said. We need more time. How much more? 2 weeks. Maybe 3. A pause. That's a long time to be isolated with a child, Dr. Chen. Are you certain? We have supplies. We have shelter. We have important work to do. What kind of work requires staying in the Arctic? The kind that might save the world. Lars laughed, but there was respect in it. You sound like Dr. Novak. She used to say the same thing. Good. She was right. What do you need from civilization? Sarah thought quickly. Supplies. Food, batteries, fuel for the generators. And I need you to mail some packages for me. Very important packages. Can you do that without asking questions? I can. Dr. Novak taught me the value of discretion. Thank you, Lars. Sarah spent that day preparing packages. USB drives with encrypted copies of Elizabeth's research. Cover letters explaining the contents. Detailed instructions for verification and replication. She addressed them to the names on Elizabeth's list. Rachel Morrison at the New York Times. Dr. James Patterson, climate scientist at MIT. Senator Elizabeth Warren's office. Greenpeace International. The Guardian newspaper. Al Jazeera. 15 packages total. Enough redundancy that suppressing them all would be nearly impossible. But she held back the most damaging evidence, the conspiracy files, the proof of corporate suppression, the memorial wall documentation, that needed more strategic deployment. Releasing it too early would give Arctis energy time to prepare their response, to muddy the waters, to attack Sarah's credibility. She needed to time it perfectly. Lars arrived on day 6 with supplies and took the packages without comment. These will be mailed from various locations, he said. Harder to trace. You've done this before. Dr. Novak was not the first scientist to need discreet assistance. The Arctic has many secrets, Dr. Chen, some worth protecting. After he left, Sarah and Maya settled into a routine. Mornings were for learning. Sarah taught Maya advanced science using Elizabeth's research as curriculum. Afternoons were for organization, digitizing remaining files, building databases, creating presentation materials. Evenings were for planning. Sarah had never thought of herself as a revolutionary. She was a surgeon, someone who fixed immediate, tangible problems. But she was learning that revolution required many of the same skills. Careful diagnosis, strategic intervention, accepting that some damage was necessary to save the patient. The planet was her patient now, and it was dying. 2 weeks after the first storm, Sarah had transformed Elizabeth's 40 years of work into a weapons arsenal. She had the scientific research, irrefutable, peer-reviewed quality, proving that catastrophic methane release would begin within 18 months. She had the solution, carbon capture technology that could buy humanity time, with complete plans for deployment. She had the conspiracy evidence, proving systematic suppression by Arctis Energy and affiliated companies. She had the legal framework, a lawsuit ready to file that would force discovery and public testimony. And she had the moral authority, a dead grandmother's final request, delivered through a homeless surgeon who had nothing left to lose. It was enough. It had to be enough. Sarah called Lars. We're ready for extraction, but we're not going back to Portland. Where are you going? New York City. I have a meeting with a journalist. When? As soon as I can get there. The flight from Greenland to New York took 3 days, with connections through Reykjavik and London. Sarah and Maya traveled light, just backpacks with clothes and a single USB drive containing everything that mattered. Sarah had encrypted copies stored in cloud servers, in safe deposit boxes, with lawyers instructed to release them if anything happened to her. But having the physical drive felt important. Tangible. Real. They landed at JFK on a Tuesday morning in late October. The city was overwhelming after weeks in Arctic isolation, noise and crowds, and the desperate pace of metropolitan life. Sarah had spent the flights preparing. She'd reached out to Rachel Morrison through encrypted email, explaining who she was and what she had. The journalist had responded cautiously, but with clear interest. They met in a coffee shop in Brooklyn, chosen because it was public enough to be safe, but quiet enough for conversation. Rachel Morrison was younger than Sarah expected, maybe 40, with sharp eyes and the permanent skepticism of someone who'd been lied to professionally for 2 decades. Dr. Chen, she said, shaking Sarah's hand. You said you have evidence of corporate suppression of climate research. I have proof of a conspiracy involving billions of dollars and potentially millions of lives. Rachel's eyebrows rose. That's a significant claim. I know. That's why I brought proof. Sarah pulled out her laptop. Maya sat beside her, coloring quietly but listening to everything. For the next 3 hours, Sarah walked Rachel through Elizabeth's research. The methane deposits. The carbon capture technology. The suppression campaign. The evidence of coordination between energy companies, governments, and research institutions. Rachel's expression shifted from skepticism to shock to professional focus. She took notes constantly, asked penetrating questions, verified dates and sources. "This is incredible," she said finally. "If it's all real, it's real. Every document is verifiable. Every piece of data can be replicated. My grandmother spent 40 years making sure it couldn't be dismissed." "Your grandmother was Dr. Elizabeth Novak." "Yes." She was considered a fringe figure. Climate denier groups called her a catastrophist. They called her that because she threatened their funding sources. Read the emails. Arctis Energy coordinated the smear campaign against her. Rachel read. Her jaw tightened. "Jesus Christ. Will you publish this? I need to verify everything first. Cross-check sources. Get expert opinions. But if it all holds up?" Rachel met Sarah's eyes. "This is Pulitzer-level work. This is career-defining. This changes everything. How long will verification take?" "Minimum 2 weeks. Possibly a month. The Times legal team will want to review everything before publication." A month. Sarah felt urgency clawing at her. The methane deposits didn't care about publication schedules. What about publishing some of it now? The scientific research, at least. Get into public awareness while you verify the conspiracy elements. Rachel shook her head. "We publish this in pieces. Arctis Energy attacks each piece individually. We publish it all at once. As one comprehensive story, they can't fight on every front simultaneously. It's better journalism and better strategy." Sarah knew she was right. But a month felt like forever. "I need protection," Sarah said. "If Arctis Energy realizes what I have before publication." "You'll be a target," Rachel finished. "I know. I've dealt with this before. Corporate sources who need protection. I can connect you with lawyers who specialize in whistleblower cases. And I can arrange security if you think it's necessary." "It's necessary. My grandmother documented what happens to people who threaten their interests." Rachel's expression darkened. "Show me." Sarah showed her the memorial wall photographs. Rachel went pale. "My God, some of these people, I knew about them. I investigated some of these deaths. We couldn't prove anything, but..." She looked up. "You're right to be scared." "I'm not scared," Sarah said, surprising herself. "I'm strategic. There's a difference." Rachel smiled grimly. "You sound like your grandmother." They spent another hour working out logistics. Rachel would begin immediate verification of the scientific research, bringing an independent climate scientist to review Elizabeth's data. Meanwhile, she'd build the investigative story around the conspiracy, documenting the suppression campaign with the same rigor Elizabeth had used. Publication was tentatively scheduled for late November, timed to coincide with an international climate conference. Maximum impact, maximum visibility. Sarah and Maya needed somewhere safe to stay. Rachel connected them with a lawyer named Chen, no relation, who specialized in protecting whistleblowers. He arranged a safe house in Queens, a small apartment owned by a nonprofit that supported environmental activists. "You'll be safe here," Marcus said, showing them the space. "Building has good security. No one knows you're here except Rachel and me. Stay offline as much as possible. Don't contact anyone from your old life." Sarah thought about Portland, about the colleagues who probably thought she'd had a breakdown, about the mother who'd written her off as following in crazy Elizabeth's footsteps. "That won't be a problem," she said. The apartment was small but clean. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, a living room with windows overlooking a quiet street. After weeks in Arctic research stations and months before that living in their car, it felt like luxury. Maya claimed the smaller bedroom, immediately spreading her drawings across the floor and organizing her small collection of belongings with solemn care. Sarah stood in the doorway, watching her daughter create order from chaos, and felt something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. That night, after Maya was asleep, Sarah sat at the kitchen table with her laptop and Elizabeth's research. She began writing. Not for publication. Rachel would handle that. This was personal. A letter to the world that might never be sent, but needed to be written anyway. "My name is Dr. Sarah Chen," she typed. "I'm a surgeon, a single mother, and as of 3 weeks ago, the inheritor of revolutionary climate technology that could save millions of lives. I didn't ask for this responsibility. I barely knew my grandmother. But I've spent the last month living in her Arctic research station, reading her work, understanding her sacrifice, and I've learned something important. We're being lied to, not by scientists, not by activists, but by companies that profit from our ignorance, that have spent billions ensuring we stay confused and divided while the planet burns. My grandmother tried to warn us. She built solutions. She documented everything, and she was systematically silenced. I'm not going to be silent. In the coming weeks, you're going to hear a lot about me. Arctis Energy and companies like them will attack my credibility. They'll call me unstable, attention-seeking, radical. They'll say my grandmother was a fringe figure, that her research can't be trusted. They're lying. Everything I'm sharing can be verified. Every piece of data can be replicated. Every claim can be tested. I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to trust the science, to look at the evidence, to demand that your governments and corporations stop prioritizing profit over survival. My grandmother spent 40 years alone in the Arctic trying to save a world that didn't want to be saved. She died hoping someone would finish her work. I'm going to finish it, not because I'm brave, not because I'm special, but because I have a 10-year-old daughter who deserves a future, and every moment I stay silent is a moment stolen from her. So I'm done being silent. This is war against greed, against ignorance, against the companies that decided their quarterly earnings mattered more than our children's survival. And we're going to win, because the truth is stronger than their lies, because people are better than their cynicism suggests, because when faced with existential threat, humanity has always found ways to fight back. My grandmother believed that. Even alone in the ice, even silenced and dismissed, she believed. I believe it too. Watch this space. The revolution is coming. Sarah saved the letter. She'd decide later whether to publish it. For now, it was enough to have written it, to have transformed her fear and anger into something that felt like purpose. She checked her phone. Several missed calls from Portland. The hospital, her supervisor, her landlord. All of them wanting to know where she was when she was coming back, what was happening. She turned the phone off. The old Sarah would have called back, explained, apologized. But the old Sarah was gone, left behind in a Portland parking garage somewhere between desperation and inheritance. The new Sarah was someone different. Someone who'd seen what courage looked like frozen in Arctic ice. Someone who understood that some fights demanded everything. She thought about Elizabeth, dying alone in Polaris 7, surrounded by data and hope and the absolute certainty that someone would eventually understand. I understand now, Sarah whispered to the empty apartment. I'm sorry it took so long, but I understand. The next morning, Maya woke early and found Sarah still at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers and laptop screens. Did you sleep, Mom? A little. Are you okay? Sarah looked at her daughter, small and strong, and already learning that safety was something you built rather than something you counted on. Yeah, baby. I'm okay. Better than okay. Actually, what are we doing today? Today we're going to talk to scientists. Rachel's arranged meetings with climate researchers who want to verify your great-grandmother's work. Can I come? Of course. You're part of this team. They took the subway to Columbia University, where Dr. James Patterson, one of the names on Elizabeth's list, had arranged access to his laboratory. Patterson was in his 60s, distinguished, with the weary optimism of someone who'd spent decades trying to wake a sleeping world. He embraced Sarah like she was a long-lost colleague. Dr. Novak was a friend, he said, one of the few people who understood how urgent this is. When she died, I thought her work would be lost. I'm so grateful you found it. Sarah showed him Elizabeth's ice core data, her methane analysis, her carbon capture designs. Patterson reviewed everything with the careful attention of a scientist who knew that extraordinary claims required extraordinary evidence. 3 hours later, he looked up with tears in his eyes. It's all sound, he said. The methodology is impeccable. The data is irrefutable. This methane release pattern. Sarah, we're looking at a potential 3-degree warming trigger within 2 years. That's catastrophic. Can her carbon capture technology help? If it works as described? Yes. It could buy us critical time. Patterson pulled up Elizabeth's designs on his computer, studying the chemical processes. This is brilliant. Elegant. Why didn't she publish this? She tried. She was suppressed. Patterson's jaw tightened. Arctis Energy. You know about them? Every climate scientist knows about them. They've been funding denial campaigns, buying research institutions, ensuring that action gets delayed just long enough for them to maximize profit. He shook his head bitterly. We've known for years, but couldn't prove coordination. I can prove it, Sarah said. I have the emails, the financial transactions, everything. Patterson's expression shifted to something fierce. Then we need to get this published. Immediately. Rachel Morrison is good, but this needs to hit every major scientific journal simultaneously. I can help coordinate that. How long will it take? For publication in peer-reviewed journals? Months, normally. But given the urgency and the quality of the work, we might be able to accelerate. Submit to Nature, Science, PNAS all at once. Explain the time-sensitive nature. If we can get even one major journal to publish within weeks, it creates credibility that makes the newspaper story harder to attack. They worked through the afternoon, Patterson connecting with colleagues around the world, building a network of scientists willing to review Elizabeth's research urgently. Maya sat in the corner of the laboratory, watching adults rush around with papers and laptops, understanding that something important was building. By evening, Patterson had commitment from researchers at MIT, Stanford, Oxford, and the Potsdam Institute. A distributed review process that would be harder for Arctis Energy to interfere with. This is happening, Patterson said, his voice filled with something between excitement and terror. We're actually going to do this. Were you doubting it? Sarah asked. I've been fighting this fight for 30 years, he said quietly. You learn not to hope too hard. But this feels different. This feels like maybe we finally have the ammunition we need. That night, back at the safe house, Sarah received an encrypted email from Rachel Morrison. Initial fact-checking is complete. Everything verifies. I'm bringing in a team, 3 other investigative journalists, 2 research assistants, legal review. We're going to build this story properly. But Sarah, I need to warn you. People are starting to ask questions. Someone at Arctis Energy knows you inherited the Polaris 7 station. They've been making inquiries, asking who you are, what you're planning. They don't know what you have yet, but they're suspicious. Be careful. Sarah felt ice run down her spine. They were watching already. She called Marcus, the lawyer. Rachel says Arctis Energy is asking about me. I know. I've been monitoring. So far, just corporate intelligence gathering. Nothing illegal, nothing actionable. But it confirms they're aware of you. What should I do? Stay invisible. Don't contact anyone from your old life. Don't go anywhere predictable. And Sarah? His voice became serious. Start thinking about what happens if they come after you directly. Legally, financially, or otherwise. I'm ready for legal. I mean otherwise. The implication hung heavy. You think they'd actually... Look at your grandmother's memorial wall. Look at what's happened to other people who threaten their interests. I'm not saying it will happen, but you need to be prepared for the possibility. After hanging up, Sarah sat in the dark apartment, listening to Maya's gentle breathing from the next room. She'd known this would be dangerous, but knowing intellectually and feeling the actual threat were different things. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Dr. Chen, a man's voice, smooth and professional. Who is this? My name is David Reeves. I'm Executive Vice President of Corporate Communications for Arctis Energy. I was hoping we could talk. Sarah's heart hammered. How did you get this number? We're a resourceful company, Dr. Chen. But that's not important. What's important is that I understand you've come into possession of materials relating to the late Dr. Elizabeth Novak. I inherited my grandmother's research station. That's a matter of public record. Indeed. And we want to make you an offer. I'm not interested in offers. I think you'll be interested in this one. Dr. Chen, we know you're in difficult financial circumstances. We know you lost your job, your home, your stability. We'd like to help. By helping, you mean silencing me. A pause. Then, We prefer to think of it as mutually beneficial arrangement. We acquire the Polaris 7 station and all associated research materials. You receive compensation that would resolve your financial difficulties and allow you to rebuild your life. Everyone benefits, except the planet. Dr. Chen, be realistic. Climate change is happening regardless of what you or I do. The question is whether you and your daughter face that future in poverty or in comfort. We're offering comfort, significant comfort, $5 million for the station and all research materials, with the understanding that you'll refrain from public discussion of Dr. Novak's work. $5 million. More money than Sarah had ever imagined having. Enough to give Maya everything, education, security, a real home. Enough to make this all go away. No, Sarah said. Excuse me. I said no. My grandmother spent 40 years documenting truth that you people have been suppressing. I'm not going to help you bury it. Reeves' voice cooled. Dr. Chen, I urge you to reconsider. We're being generous now, but that generosity has limits. If you choose to make this difficult, we have considerable resources for making your life very complicated. Is that a threat? It's a reality. Think about your daughter, Dr. Chen. Think about what's best for her. I'm thinking about her. I'm thinking about the world she'll inherit if people like you keep winning. People like us are going to keep winning. You can't stop that. The only question is whether you profit from that inevitability or get crushed by it. Goodbye, Mr. Reeves. Sarah hung up, her hands shaking. They knew, and they were already moving against her. She called Marcus immediately, explained the conversation. They're testing you, he said, seeing if he could be bought. When you refused, you became a threat. What do? Accelerate everything. How fast can Rachel publish? She said 2 weeks minimum. Make it 1. Whatever corners need cutting, cut them. Because Arctis Energy doesn't make offers and then politely wait for you to reconsider. They're going to escalate. Ow! Legal harassment. Media attacks on your credibility. Possibly threats to your custody of Maya if they can manufacture grounds. Corporate warfare is ugly, Sarah, and they're very good at it. Sarah looked at Maya's closed bedroom door. They're not taking my daughter. Then we need to move fast. Publish before they can organize their response. Get the truth out so widely that suppressing it becomes impossible. That night, Sarah barely slept. She lay awake thinking about Reeves' smooth voice, about $5 million, about the memorial wall full of people who'd fought and lost. But she also thought about Elizabeth, alone in the eyes, documenting truth with absolute certainty that it mattered. And she thought about Maya, who'd asked if they were going to be heroes and deserved a mother who understood that sometimes courage meant risking everything. The next morning, Sarah called Rachel. We need to publish sooner. I know. Reeves called me too. Offered us access to exclusive Arctis energy research in exchange for killing the story. What did you say? I told him to go to hell. But Sarah, he wasn't bluffing about their resources. They're going to come after both of us. Then we fight back harder. How fast can you publish? If I skip some verification steps, trust Patterson's peer review, and get our legal team to expedite, maybe 10 days. Make it 7. Sarah, they're not going to wait politely while we do this properly. 7 days? Well, they'll find a way to stop us. Rachel was quiet for a moment. Then, okay, 7 days. But we'll need to work around the clock. I can work around the clock. The next week was the most intense of Sarah's life. She worked 18-hour days, providing Rachel's team with documentation, answering questions, helping scientists verify data. Maya essentially lived at Columbia's lab, adopted by Patterson's research team as a mascot while her mother fought to save the world. Patterson's network of scientists moved with unprecedented speed, reviewing Elizabeth's research and confirming its validity. Their consensus was unanimous and terrifying. Elizabeth had been right about everything. The methane deposits were destabilizing. Catastrophic release was imminent. Her carbon capture technology could help but needed immediate deployment. Meanwhile, Rachel and her team built the investigative story, documenting the suppression campaign with devastating precision. Emails showing coordination between Arctis executives and government officials. Financial records proving bribes to research institutions. Communications proving they'd known about the methane threat for years and had actively worked to prevent public awareness. On day 4, the attacks began. An anonymous website appeared claiming Sarah was mentally unstable, citing her recent homelessness and erratic behavior. Social media accounts started spreading the story, calling her a grifter exploiting her grandmother's fringe research for attention. Marcus tracked the campaign to a PR firm with known ties to Arctis Energy. Ignore it, he advised. Responding gives it oxygen. Just focus on publication. But on day 5, escalated. Sarah received a letter from Child Protective Services. Someone had filed a complaint alleging that she was endangering Maya through unstable living conditions and paranoid delusions about corporate conspiracies. The letter demanded an immediate home inspection and psychological evaluation. Sarah called Marcus in a panic. They're trying to take Maya. I know. I'm already on it. The complaint is obviously fabricated. Anonymous source, vague allegations. But we need to respond properly. I'm filing motions to dismiss and requesting investigation of who filed the complaint. Will it work? Eventually. But Sarah, they're going to keep probing for weakness. Every vulnerability you have, they'll exploit. I don't have vulnerabilities anymore, Sarah said, her voice hard. They already took everything that could be taken. There's nothing left to threaten me with except Maya, and I will burn their company to the ground before I let them touch her. Good. Channel that anger into getting this published. On day 6, Patterson called with good news. Nature is publishing. Early online edition tomorrow morning, ahead of print publication. The data is too compelling to delay. Tomorrow, Sarah's heart leaped. They're calling it one of the most important climate papers in a decade. Elizabeth's work is about to reach every scientist on Earth. Rachel called an hour later. We're going to print. Sunday edition, front page, above the fold. Full investigative report on the suppression campaign, Elizabeth's research, everything. It's going to be massive. Sunday was day 7. They'd made it. Sarah called Maya to her that evening. They sat together on the couch in their small safe house apartment, and Sarah tried to explain what was about to happen. Tomorrow, the world is going to learn about your great-grandmother's work, about the climate crisis she discovered, about the people who try to hide it. Will people listen? Some will, some won't, but enough will that it will matter. What happens to us? Sarah pulled Maya close. I don't know exactly. Things might get harder before they get better. But baby, we're going to be okay. We have a truth. We have each other. That's enough. Are you scared? Sarah thought about lying, about being the strong parent who admitted no fear. But Maya deserved better. Yeah, baby. I'm terrified, but I'm doing it anyway. That's what bravery is. Maya nodded against her shoulder. Great-grandma will be proud of you. Sarah's throat closed. I hope so. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She paced the apartment, checking news sites obsessively, waiting for Nature's online publication. At 3 a.m. Eastern Time, it went live. Catastrophic methane release event. Detection, documentation, and mitigation strategy by Dr. Elizabeth Novak, with posthumous editorial support from Dr. James Patterson and colleagues. Within an hour, it was trending on every scientific platform. Within 3 hours, mainstream media picked it up. By dawn, Elizabeth's 40-year warning was finally being heard. Sarah watched the sunrise from their apartment window, her laptop showing dozens of news sites running the story. Breaking! Arctic methane time bomb discovered by late climate scientist. Her phone rang. Rachel, you're seeing this? The journalist asked. Yeah. Our story publishes in 3 hours. Sunday morning times, like we planned. But Sarah, I need to warn you. Arctis Energy is about to hit back. Hard. They've scheduled a press conference for noon. They're going to attack Elizabeth's credibility, claim the research is flawed, maybe attack you personally. Let them try. The science is solid. I know, but they're good at this. They're going to sow doubt, confuse the public, make this about controversy rather than truth. You need to be ready. I'm ready. Sarah wasn't ready. Nothing could have prepared her for what happened when the New York Times story hit at 9 a.m. Climate scientists' research suppressed for decades by energy giants screamed the headline. Below it, Rachel's comprehensive investigation detailed everything: the methane discovery, the carbon capture technology, the suppression campaign, the people who died or been destroyed for threatening corporate interests. And prominently featured, Sarah herself, the granddaughter who'd inherited the fight. Yes, I'm arranging enhanced security. Former Secret Service agent named Jennifer Walsh. She'll shadow you and Maya starting tomorrow. How much will that cost? The Times is covering it. They consider you a protected source now. Sarah thought about the memorial wall, about people who disappeared or died fighting these same battles. I need more than security, she said. I need insurance. Multiple copies of everything, distributed to people Arctis can't threaten. And I need a dead man switch. If something happens to me, everything gets released automatically. I can arrange that. And Marcus? I need a will. Full custody of Maya to Rachel Morrison if anything happens. And instructions that all of Elizabeth's research goes to Patterson and his colleagues. Marcus's expression sobered. Sarah, please, just do it. I need to know Maya will be protected. He nodded. I'll have it drawn up tonight. The morning of the interview, Sarah woke at 5 a.m. Maya was still asleep. Jennifer Walsh, the security agent, sat in the living room, alert and professional. Sarah stood in front of the bathroom mirror, looking at herself. She looked tired, thin, older than her 36 years. But her eyes were clear and determined. She thought about what she wanted to say, how to tell this story in a way that couldn't be dismissed or distorted. The car arrived at 6 a.m. Rachel accompanied them to the studio, coaching Sarah on the drive. Don't get defensive. Don't apologize. You're a doctor and a scientist presenting evidence. Let the facts speak. If they attack your credibility, pivot back to the research. And Sarah, Rachel gripped her hand. You're about to become famous. Your life is never going to be private again. Are you ready for that? No, Sarah admitted. But I'm doing it anyway. The interview was on Morning America, their most watched slot. The host was sympathetic but professional, clearly aware this was a major story. They started gently, letting Sarah explain who Elizabeth was, what she discovered, how Sarah had inherited the research. Then came the harder questions. Dr. Chen, Arctis Energy has suggested you're being manipulated by environmental activists, that your recent personal struggles have made you vulnerable to exploitation. How do you respond? Sarah looked directly into the camera. I respond by pointing to the evidence. Everything I'm presenting has been verified by independent scientists. Nature published my grandmother's. By 10 a.m., Sarah's face was on every news channel. Her old colleagues in Portland were being interviewed. Her mother, who hadn't spoken to her in months, was giving tearful statements about her daughter's mental health struggles. Arctis Energy's press conference at noon was a masterclass in crisis management. Their CEO, a silver-haired man named Thomas Whitmore, spoke with practiced sincerity about respecting Dr. Novak's decades of work while gently suggesting that her conclusions might have been influenced by isolation and age. He presented their own scientists who questioned aspects of Elizabeth's methodology. He emphasized that climate change was real and serious, but that catastrophizing helps no one. And then he mentioned Sarah. We're deeply concerned about Dr. Chen's well-being, Whitmore said, his voice dripping with false compassion. She's recently experienced significant personal hardships, divorce, job loss, housing instability. We worry that she's been taken advantage of by activists with their own agendas. We've offered to help her, but those offers have been refused. The implication was clear. Sarah was unstable, manipulated, untrustworthy. Sarah watched from the safe house, fury building. He's good, Marcus said, sitting beside her, making it about your mental state rather than the evidence. The evidence speaks for itself. To scientists, yes, but most people aren't scientists. They're going to hear homeless single mother with mental health struggles and doubt everything. So what do? You fight back. You tell your story your way. Rachel's arranged an interview for you tomorrow morning. National television. You're going to face Whitmore's narrative directly. Sarah's stomach clenched. She'd spent her career avoiding spotlight, being the competent surgeon in the background. Now she had to become a public figure, a spokesperson for truth, a target. But Elizabeth had spent 40 years alone in the ice, silenced and dismissed. Sarah could handle one interview. Okay, she said. Let's do it. That night, the first death threat arrived. An email, anonymous and vicious, describing in detail what would happen to Sarah and Maya if they didn't stop spreading lies about American companies. Marcus reported it to the FBI, but he warned Sarah, this is just the beginning. Once you become public, the threats multiply. Some are just trolls, but some are serious, Sarah finished. Research. The New York Times fact-checked the suppression campaign. This isn't about my mental state. It's about truth that's been buried for 40 years. But you did recently experience homelessness. Yes, I was living in my car with my daughter because my ex-husband committed financial fraud and because our medical system is broken. That experience taught me what millions of Americans already know. Our systems are failing. Not just housing and healthcare, but our climate response. And companies like Arctis Energy are actively making it worse. Those are strong accusations. They're documented facts. Read the Times investigation. Read the emails. They knew about the methane threat and chose profit over warning the public. What do you want people to take away from this? Sarah took a breath. This was her moment. I want people to know that we're in immediate danger. Not distant, theoretical danger, but danger that will manifest within 2 years. And I want them to know we have solutions. My grandmother designed technology that could help. But implementing it requires acknowledging the problem and holding accountable the companies that have prevented action. And what about your personal future? What happens to you and your daughter now? I don't know, Sarah admitted. I know we're facing threats. I know powerful people want us to disappear. But I also know my daughter is watching, learning what it means to stand up for truth. That's worth more than safety. The interview ran 12 minutes, twice the normal segment length. When it ended, Sarah's phone was already exploding with messages. Patterson, perfect. Exactly the right tone. Rachel, you were brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Marcus, threats are spiking, but so is public support. You're trending #1 on Twitter. And one from an unknown number. You've made a serious mistake, Dr. Chen. Last chance to reconsider. Sarah deleted it and turned off her phone. They returned to the safe house where Maya was waiting with Jennifer. I saw you on TV. Maya rushed to hug her. You were amazing. Sarah held her daughter tight. Thanks, baby. Are we going to win? Sarah thought about Elizabeth, alone in the ice, documenting truth that took 40 years to be heard. Thought about the memorial wall full of people who'd fought and lost. Thought about the planet warming and the methane deposits destabilizing and the clock ticking down to catastrophe. I don't know if we'll win, she said honestly, but we're going to fight. And that's all anyone can do. That afternoon, something shifted. Public opinion, which had been split between supporting Sarah and believing Arctis Energy's spin, began consolidating. Scientists worldwide started speaking up, confirming Elizabeth's research, adding their voices to the call for immediate action. Climate activists organized rallies in major cities. Students walked out of schools, demanding governments respond to the methane threat. Politicians who'd been bought by energy companies found themselves facing angry constituents who wanted answers. And most significantly, other energy companies, seeing Arctis Energy's reputation imploding, began distancing themselves. Some released statements supporting climate action. Others quietly started investing in carbon capture technology remarkably similar to Elizabeth's designs. The dam was breaking, but Arctis Energy wasn't going quietly. On the third day after Sarah's interview, they filed a lawsuit. Not against Sarah directly, that would look like bullying, but against the Times, claiming defamation and demanding retraction of the investigative story. The suit was clearly meant to intimidate, to make media organizations think twice about covering the story. Instead, it backfired. The Guardian, The Washington Post, Al Jazeera, and dozens of other outlets picked up the story, each adding their own investigations. What had been one newspaper's expose became a global journalistic pylon. Every aspect of Arctis Energy's business came under scrutiny. Their political donations, their lobbying activities, their environmental record, their executive compensation. Within a week, they were toxic. And on day 12 after Nature's publication, something extraordinary happened. The United Nations called an emergency climate session. Not the usual annual conference with carefully negotiated statements and minimal commitments. An actual emergency session, demanding immediate action on the methane deposits and serious consideration of carbon capture deployment. Patterson called Sarah in tears. "We did it. We actually did it. They're listening." But Sarah knew it wasn't over. Emergency sessions were one thing. Actual implementation was another. And Arctis Energy, while damaged, still had billions of dollars and powerful friends. The war was just beginning. And Sarah Chen, broke surgeon and accidental revolutionary, was learning that sometimes inheritance meant more than property or money. Sometimes it meant carrying forward a fight you never asked for, armed with truth and determination, hoping that would be enough to change a world that desperately needed changing. Outside their safe house window, New York City continued its frantic pace. But inside, Sarah sat with Maya, reviewing Elizabeth's designs for the 1,000th time, planning next steps in a war that would define their lives and possibly save the planet. The inheritance had been accepted. The revolution had begun, and there was no turning back now. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you love this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.